Welcome everybody. This is episode, I think it's 7, right, Alex?
Seven sounds about right.
Yeah, of our special quarantine podcast, Happy Fun Music Time. This episode is a super special, the Dillinger Escape Plan discography ranking. Uh,
Oh yeah.
so I believe we're gonna go through album by album, from Calculating Infinity to Dissociation, share some thoughts, and then we'll do a little ranking at the end. How does that sound?
That sounds just dandy to me.
Okay, perfect. So we start at Calculating Infinity. Uh, hold up. We should give a little background on these guys to start.
Yeah, let's do that first.
So they formed in March of 1997 in Morris Plains, New Jersey, United States. I'm currently reading this off their Rate Their Music profile. And they broke up on December 29th, 2017. So hopefully this will be the only episode we have to do. So they won't come back and make more albums. And then we'll have to delete the episode and re-record it. And then release
selfishly,
it.
I
Just
hope
swap
they
it
never
out.
get back together. Yeah, just so we never have to do this again. They hope they stay broken up forever.
Yeah, exactly. So I discovered these guys around when Ironworks came out in maybe '08 or '07 when I was in middle school. That's sort of when they were on my radar. I thought Ironworks was really cool. They did this whole Guitar World article about them. Just sort of how they wrote Ironworks and all that. I don't remember a thing from it, but that's how I remember discovering them. I don't know, what's like the first Dillinger that you heard?
Thinking back, I think the first Dillinger song I ever heard would have been Milk Lizards because I.
And yeah, I thought it was really cool. I mean, weirdly, the part that struck me the most was that piano freak out part, like in the little, I don't know, verse B section, the pre-chorus section, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, that's where they're like opening up the second verse, I think, right?
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah. So that was my exposure to this band, and then, unbeknownst to me at the time, that is one of their more tame songs.
Yeah.
And so, when I dove further into it, at the time I would have been the same age as you, and I really I couldn't comprehend a lot of the more complex material that they have. But nowadays, obviously, I'm a more seasoned listener, so I can appreciate the technical wizardry that they put on.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with this band too is it's hard to rank them because I think each album sort of retains that level of intense technicality, sort of hooks, good songwriting. There's sort of a level of consistency that even rises above like a lot of those workman-like bands. So they're like the most consistently workman-like band in a way. So it was very difficult for me to rank these albums.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think part of that is because they really had a sound figured out even on their first album. They were really pioneering mathcore, if not pioneering it, then popularizing it. And every subsequent album they put out after Calculating Infinity never deviated strongly from that formula. There are excursions into other experimental areas, and they introduced more electronics as they went along. And that EP they did with Mike Patton, I think, really had an influence on them. But
oh yeah.
The core sound really doesn't change much throughout their discography, and in a way they kind of reminds me of a band like Meshuggah, which makes small adjustments to the formula but never like totally upends it. As opposed to like an Ulver or something, which is just completely all over the map. So that's another reason that I think it's hard to rank these albums, because they're all good and none of them are huge outliers.
Yeah, they have a lot of similar elements in them too, and that sort of your sort of Mike Patton influence point. You can tell. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Greg Puciato. I think it's Puciato.
It's either Puciato, whatever. Greg.
Yeah, Greg, Italian last name. He's very much like a huge fan of Mike Patton. I don't know. You can kind of tell, sort of like from a lot of the choruses and sort of unique things he's trying to do with his voice and everything. You can tell it's not like a rip-off, but you can tell he's heavily influenced.
Yeah, and even their original vocalist Dimitri Metakakis, who I can pronounce that name because it's Greek, so I know how to do that one. But even he said Faith No More was a huge influence on him. And Dillinger, it would have been, I forget what year, but at some point they actually opened for Mr. Bungle.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, when Mr. Bungle was still touring. So I don't know the year off the top of my head, but I imagine that tour had a big influence on them, and it's because Mike Patton was a fan of the band, and so invited them out to open for Bungle, and so they did that, and then later he did the EP with them. So I think that like Pattonism, that DNA was always with them, but it really came out with Greg, and you can hear it on Miss Machine very strongly.
Oh yeah, I think that they didn't really need a lot of time to sort of refine into the sound they got to. Like, I think Miss Machine, like, more or less had it down. Just sort of, they took the chance with each subsequent album to make different sorts of detours on songs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the production improves. I think that's the other thing, is that as you go along in their discography, I mean, partly because they're newer, but also I think they get a better handle on the technical side of producing albums, or they hired the right people or whatever. But, we'll get to it with the individual albums, but an album like Miss Machine does not sound near as good production-wise as like a Dissociation or One of Us Is the Killer. Like, I think they figured out as they went along how to produce their sound to make it to improve upon it.
Yeah,
they didn't change the musical elements, but the production elements improved to enhance what they were putting out.
That is something I noticed. Like, every album, like, the music is a lot alike, like, with each subsequent album, but I found there's major sort of a production change up on, like, record to record. Like, it varied pretty wildly, just like the mix and like the tones of the guitars, sort of how loud the drums were, the snare sound, all that kind of stuff. It seemed to be way different on each album, like more so than most other bands I can think of. Usually it's sort of like a gradual thing, but Dillinger, like, it was always sort of an upwards trending in quality, but like, just there was a lot of like, they're kind of zigzagging upwards at the same time, like just sort of different kind of tones and everything.
The other like remarkable thing about their consistency is that this is a band that has like wild lineup changes constantly.
Oh yeah.
Like in terms of the guitar players, I mean, they've had a fairly consistent vocalist throughout. I mean, they changed it a couple times, but for the most part, Greg has been the vocalist from 01 or 02 or whatever it was to the end of their lifespan.
Yeah, I view the band as like kind of Greg and Ben Weinman's band. Like, they're really the two head honchos there.
Yeah, I think it's really Ben's vision, and then I think Greg had an increasing hand in it as the band went along, and I think One of Us Is the Killer was all about their relationship, and that's gets into the why they called the album that, and I will get more into that when we get to that album, but so it is interesting that despite all of the tumultuousness of their lineup, they still maintain this consistency. It is, I think, because Ben Weinman and Greg to a degree, but really Ben has like a very firm grasp on what Dillinger is.
Yeah, fair enough. She was there the whole time.
Yeah.
So I guess let's get to it. They have, I think we're going to cover 7 releases today. Uh, so first off, we got the album that started it all. The album that was rumored to have its time signatures judged by a 20-sided dice. It is Calculating Infinity. It was released in 1999. It's a groundbreaking mathcore album for its time. A lot of great moments on it. One of the first live videos I saw, I think it was sort of like a low quality video of them playing 43% Burnt in like some tiny venue with you see, like, it's one of the only times I saw Chris Penny live, and they're just going absolutely nuts because their stage presence has always been insane. Really raw, that live performance and the album. A lot of really high tempos the entire time. Kind of the aforementioned 43% Burnt. One of their biggest songs, I think, if you had to put like a top 5 most popular Dillinger songs. Yeah, and then just tons of nuts parts. Destro's Secret, they go through like 50 different sections in one song, and it's sub 2 minutes. This is one of my favorites. We'll get to the rankings at the end, but what were some of your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, even before I get to the album, that is also a good point you brought up about their live shows. Probably should have mentioned that at the start. But yeah, like Dillinger is known for having crazy live shows with fire breathing and jumping into the crowd and hurting themselves, and it's a very physical show, and there is almost a legend built up around the Dillinger live show that really advances their mystique, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the music is so spastic. I mean, there's really no other way you could perform this. Like to stand still and do like a shoegaze type set, which is not project the energy that this material requires. But yeah, Calculating Infinity. So this one, it came out in '99. It came out after they did a few EPs, right? We're not going to talk about them in detail, but they had put out
Under the Running Board, I think that's what it's called.
Under the Running Board, yeah, and I think they had a self-titled thing too at some point in there. But anyway, they had to put out a couple of releases at this point, and Calculating Infinity was the first full length they did. And I have a stat here. It went on to sell over 100,000 copies, making Dillinger the best-selling band signed to Relapse Records at the time, which is interesting. And it's also the only full length they would do with their original singer. He would leave after this one to focus on, quote, family life and working full-time on graphic arts and design. So there's that. And funnily enough, he would also do the artwork for Option Paralysis, which is a few albums down the line. But
I didn't know he did. I didn't know he did the Option Paralysis artwork. That is good artwork.
Yeah. So that was him. So that's pretty cool. He also guests on Fix Your Face, which is coming up a couple albums from now. Yeah. So he's not done entirely in the Dillinger oeuvre, but this is his only full length album as their lead singer. And yeah, so Calculating Infinity, I mean, this is a legendary album in a lot of ways. I think this is the album that, like I said in the start, really, if it didn't pioneer mathcore, it popularized the genre.
Yeah.
It really it kind of set the template that I think a whole legion of other bands have tried over the years to emulate, and most have failed at it. But it is the first time you listen to this album, if you're not prepared, it's going to sound just like complete randomness. There is
if you're not really used to the genre.
Yeah, the tempos change. It's pretty ferocious. The vocals are screamed almost all the time. The songs are, on this one, generally shorter, with a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, they're quick, like very, very speedy, very complex.
Yeah, there wasn't really any longer cuts on this album compared to later ones.
Yeah, and later albums they would branch out, like we were saying, but this one is very focused. It's very uh, spastic. I think that's the best word to describe this album,
Yeah.
and it's a good album title for it too, because it does sound like you're like, it's like trying to hold on to like a tesseract or something, and there's like numbers and stuff flying all over the place, and it's just like
Yeah, it's sort of trying to have something that's like exploding be more focused in a way, like just sort of like barely hanging on to something.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a really it's an iconic album, I think, which, Dillinger have a ton of good albums, but this is the one that I think is most revered in their discography.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Like, sort of an album of this like intensity of like a genre that wasn't really popular at the time was like the best selling debut on Relapse. Like,
Yeah.
you figured it would be something from a genre that was more popular around that time. Like 99, what was like skate punk was pretty big back then. Like, if we're talking about more sort of hardcore underground sort of genres, yeah, skate punk, like early pop punk, that's sort of like emo pop bands even were like starting around then. But it's shocking like this kind of album was that huge.
Yeah.
Just to start off from a band nobody had really ever heard of.
Yeah, and I mean, it's partly. I mean, I'm not sure who else was on Relativity at the time, but the fact that it sold 100,000 copies is pretty astounding. Because yeah, this is a band that came out of nowhere, and really, again, pioneered a sound. I think that people were like curious about it. It didn't sound like anyone else, and that's. It's unusual for a debut album to really catapult a band into the level of notoriety that these guys have, but Dillinger did it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think this is one of those albums that if you are a metal fan or like an extreme music fan, you kind of have to hear this. It's one of those classic albums that defines like a whole movement that came after it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're if you're like sort of a bigger hardcore extreme metal fan, if you're coming sort of from that side of the spectrum, this is almost the best starter album, I think, because it's just super focused in that you're getting just a lot of that side of Dillinger.
Yeah. There's an argument for sure that it is the best album they did, and we'll reveal at the end what I think about it and what you think about that. But there is like a large subsection of the fan base that think that, and they're not. It's not a silly opinion. Like, there's a real case to be made that this is the best album they ever did.
Oh yeah, for sure. That I more meant like, not that it's objectively their best album, but like, if you're in 99 or you're even today, you're a big metalcore fan, but you've never heard Dillinger Escape Plan, which would be kind of shocking. But if you never heard them, it's like Calculating Infinity might be the best first album to listen to from Dillinger.
That's interesting.
Yeah, if you just purely like death metal or super heavy music, not that it's like death metal, but there's sort of less excursions. It's almost for better and for worse, right? It's more it's more one note than the other albums. Not even that's a bad thing, but it's sort of, I find it like the easiest to digest out of all their records.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I mean, I think you're right that for somebody who's already been ingratiated into the extreme music scene, then yeah, this probably is a good spot to start. For a regular person, I think that this is like the worst place to
absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that too.
Yeah. I think like you do not want to start with this if you are just even like just a fan of like Lamb of God or something. You're gonna want to start with
sugar-coated sour. Like.
Yeah. Exactly. You're gonna like shut it off after 5 seconds. But yeah. I think this is the base, like off of which they built their like the rest of their sound. Like this really is the foundational album for them. And so yeah, it's more it's you could say it's more one note. I think it's more it's the most focused album they ever did. I think.
Yeah, for sure.
For better and for worse, mostly for better.
They had sort of like the prototype interlude. I I can't pronounce the title, unfortunately, because it's purely punctuation. I think there's a hashtag in there. That's
asterisk hashtag dot dot.
Yeah, exactly. Classic track. No, it is cool though, because it has that sort of dark ambient feel, and it flows really well into the next song, and that's sort of the start of them doing these sort of weird excursions, but it fits in really well with the rest of the album.
Yeah. And I think that even at this point in the discography, they knew that they needed those palette cleansers.
Yeah.
They needed
Breaks.
those interludes. Yeah, because it is such a ferocious sound that to just present 10 songs or whatever of that without any sort of relief would just be exhausting, even for the most hardcore listener. So they knew that they needed some sort of reprises throughout the album.
Yeah, just for people to catch their breath, pretty much.
Or I should have said reprieves, not reprises. But anyway, yes. Anyway, whatever.
What else was I gonna say? Because you said even Dimitri, which I didn't know this about him, but it makes sense that he was also heavily influenced by Faith No More. They kind of had that sort of vibe as well with the kind of not creepy choruses, but sort of like calmer, eerie sort of passages. They had that in the Running Board. Which that might be the only moment on the album that's like that, but they did sort of expand on that and make the songs more varied as it went along. But the Running Board was almost like the start of all that, at least from my listen.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and they put that one as track 6. It's in the middle of the album. There's 11 songs, but it's that's the middle. And I think that they wisely put that there as, again, sort of a break in the formula by that point. I mean, we've had an interlude at that point. We're going to there's a hidden track at the end of this one, which I always hate when bands do that, but,
variations on a cocktail dress.
Yeah, there's like that noisy sample thing at the end, which doesn't do anything for me. I think that's a bit of a pointless thing to do here, but yeah, I think that it was a good idea to put the Running Board in the middle of the album, and we're gonna get to what the best song was. The Running Board is probably my favorite song on this album, actually. That one, and also I do love Destro's Secret and Jim Fear is just two completely bananas, like going crazy kind of songs. Yeah. So I don't know. What was your favorite song on this one?
My favorite track on this, it was a toss-up between Destro's Secret and Sugar Coated Sour. I ended up having to go with Destro's Secret just because of the amount of ideas it managed to convey in like 156, which is wild. They go into like a jazz part and then just sort of crazy technicality at the start, and I don't know, it's just sort of a flurry, and that like you feel like you've listened to like a million songs in like less than 2 minutes.
Yeah, it is very Naked City-ish, and also there's an amazing part in Destro's Secret where he comes in, like the vocalist comes in with two screams on top of each other. It's in that first 25 seconds of the song where there's like two of them going at once, and that's such a cool and really heavy part with a blast beat going on in the background. And Destro's Secret is, I think, an underrated song in the discography more broadly.
Yeah, it jumped out at me the most on that album. My least favorite... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was going to say, I think it's interesting that neither of us picked 43% Burn. as the best song.
That is a great song. I just that part of me, it's like, oh, that's such a mainstream pick, but
Yeah.
I shouldn't be doing that. But you know what? I like Destro's Secret more than 43% Burn. I mean,
yeah.
after Sugar Coated Sour, I mean, I might put 43% Burnt third favorite. Like, it would be in my top 3, top 5 songs off that album.
Yeah.
But yeah, I gotta go with Destro Secret. My least favorite track off this, it would have to be Variations on a Cocktail Dress.
Yeah.
And I feel bad criticizing these songs because it's from an era where you had CDs. This is how you listen to music, and you'd have some silence and like some silly hidden track at the end. Like, it made more sense back then, right? Because you're not like on your computer looking at like a 13-minute track with 8 minutes of silence. Like, it's just in your player. But still, like, I'm rating these albums now. So now that's the worst song because there's like 5 minutes of silence, and there's like a Buckethead Land 2 like Herbie-esque sample at the end. It's from some movie, I know, but that's what it reminded me of. So like I'd have to go with that as the worst one.
That's so interesting you brought up Buckethead right there, because funnily enough, Buckethead Land 2 has probably the only hidden track that I've ever liked on an album. Which is on Slaughter Zone Exit. He actually has 2 hidden tracks on that song. So one of them, it is Herbie, there's the silence, and then Herbie comes in. Then there's another silent gap, and then there's this I don't know, sound collage ambient song of Buckethead Land, of some people walking into one of the rides and getting slaughtered.
Oh, I remember that part. Yeah.
And the album ends with the little girl crying. Like, that is a really actually good idea for a hidden track. I thought that's one because it's so eerie coming after all the silence. But yeah, I would agree with you that on this album, Variations on a Cocktail Dress is the weakest song, and I'm not even saying that just because of the hidden track. I think overall, it's just
nothing special. Even if you cut the silence out, right?
Yeah, and I actually think that is a broader trend in their discography, that they have weak closers. I think that's something we can look at as we go along, but you know, there seems to be a conscious effort on their part to always bring it back at the end, right? Dillinger will go on excursions throughout the albums. We'll see it with Miss Machine, and we'll see it with One of Us Later, and some other ones too. But they will, they'll do a song like what's it called, Unretrified, or they will do like these weird electronic excursions, and then at the end of the album they always have to finish it off with something that is reminiscent of the core sound again. But in doing that, it almost gives the feel that, one, I've heard this already, two, they're kind of copping out by not committing to a more bold ending, and it just it gives the album a feel that you haven't really gone anywhere, that like they've tried some stuff but they haven't really changed.
The album's it's like a parabola or a circle in a way, like just on the intensity graph, like just comes back up and you're at the same place where you started.
Yeah, which I think is it can be good, but it when you listen to all of the albums like back to front, the discography, you see that as a common thread, and it just so happens that often whatever that last song is they put on tends to be like the weakest of the main Dillinger style type songs that they put on. So I think we're going to see that across many of these albums, that in my opinion the weakest song is the last one, which is kind of a not a good thing in terms of the full albums. And I think that's a big reason why, for me, like, Dillinger have never put out a perfect album.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, they're one of those bands that are like remarkably consistent in like the 3.5 to 4.5 out of 5 range, but they've never put out like one album that I think is like, a flawless record from beginning to end, and probably the closest they come is this one, is Calculating Infinity. But yeah, that's just an interesting trend that kind of jumped out at me.
I'd have to think about it more as we go album to album, but sort of from the notes I take and what I remember from my listens, I think like that you kind of hit the nail on the head a lot of the time with their closers. But yeah, I guess let's move on and figure this out if that is indeed true.
Yeah.
So next up we got Irony is a Dead Scene. This is the only EP Dillinger Escape Plan did, or the only album even, why am I saying EP, with Mike Patton. I think, from what I know, this is when Dimitri quit the band to be a graphic designer, and they were between singers, so they sort of did this as a one-off collaboration with Mike Patton. I don't really know the background behind how they got together. But yeah, they did this quick little project, and it's great. There's some moments in it that sort of Dillinger never really replicated again. Came out in 2002, and I think it's different than the rest of their discography, but it sort of pushed the envelope even more than Calculating Infinity did, and it was a big progression in a way. What were some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's hard to rank an EP amongst a bunch of LPs.
Yeah.
They're such different. It's like a novella versus a novel, right? I mean, they're just different packages, but pound for pound, this might be their most satisfying listen in a funny way. Mike Patton is the perfect voice for this band, and you really see the control that he has over his voice, even versus Greg, versus Dimitri. I mean, there is a lot more variation. There's a lot more. He has a lot more almost. Do I want to say confidence in his delivery? He
has more sort of gears and styles than the other two vocalists do, despite this even being a 4-song EP.
Yeah, and I think you really see that, and I think the other thing that I didn't touch on with Calculating Infinity, but I do think that another trend in Dillinger's discography are lyrics being kind of secondary / not generally important almost, and also being kind of weak for that reason. Like, it's not like the lyrics are very good on most of these songs, and it's kind of the case with this EP. I think it's a lot of silliness going on. Like, you have "We Will Rock You" in Hollywood Squares, and so it is, again, using they use the voice as an instrument more than
it's more style over like substance. Like lyrical substance, like lyrical style over lyrical substance, I guess.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that lends itself to Mike Patton, who has said in interviews that he values the sound of a word more than the meaning of it. So the approach of this band just goes perfectly with his approach to vocals, and I think that When Good Dogs Do Bad Things is one of if not their best song. It's such a great track. The performances are nuts across this whole EP. Even the cover they do at the end, the Aphex Twin cover, is really good. It's a pretty astounding little release, and I kind of wish they'd done more stuff with Mike Patton, actually.
Yeah, it's one of my only complaints with this is I wanted to hear like another 4 songs, or like have it round out to 10, even have this be an album, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. I this album, like Pig Latin, like those vocals in that are just absolutely nuts. And then just even the opening, Hollywood Squares, like, you're right about the lyrics, because it's just sort of this blast beat, and he's like, game over, I win, game over, you win, like that. But that stuff's really cool to me, because it's I don't know, even sort of my approach to listening to all music, it's like the delivery is almost more important than what they're saying to me. Like, 'cause it's, I don't know, you can say anything like really meekly, but you can, if you say something super confidently, it's going to get people's attention more, at least to me.
Yeah, yeah. And delivery is like 90% of the battle.
Yeah, exactly. Conversely, for me, one of my like one faults with this, and I guess is a spoiler why I didn't put this number one, is I wasn't really huge on the Aphex Twin cover. Like, it's okay and it's unique. It didn't really come together for me for my listening. I thought the building outro, that was kind of cool in it. But yeah. Otherwise, yeah, spoiler might be my least favorite track. It didn't really resonate with me. But I really like the first three songs for me. Like, I'd be tempted to put all three in like my top 10 Dillinger songs, I'll say.
Yeah, and I agree that the last, once again, the last song is the weakest one. Which, I mean, I like the cover, but I do think that it is not as good as the other three tracks.
Yeah, and that was more because I just heard these three, like, absolutely insane Dillinger cross Mike Patton songs that I feel like if I just heard, like, the cover as some sort of one-off song, I would probably even like it more, but I wanted some sort of, like, more intense, sort of cathartic outro to this. Like, it could almost just use a fifth song in there.
Yeah. I mean, and I do think that if you threw in another, 4 or 5 songs just on top of what's here already, and this was an LP, this would be the best Dillinger album.
Yeah, exactly.
If this was a full length of all the same quality as the first 3 songs, as it stands, I think it's like a really, really good EP, and one of the rare EPs that, like, I think is also essential. There's not a lot of EPs out there that I something, but this is one of them.
Yeah. Sorry, you cut out there though. You were saying
sorry.
something about how the EP was essential, and then the audio kind of tapered off. So yeah, just say it one more time.
I will try and restate it. Yeah, I just was saying that there's not a lot of EPs that I think are essential. Mostly that's my own bias. Like, I don't listen to a lot of EPs.
Yeah, fair enough.
I find LPs more like satisfying. But this is an EP that I do think is actually essential for metal fans. And yeah, I think that these are at least 3, if not 4, of Dillinger's best songs. So yes, and I think that it's a very important. This is like not a fork in the road, but a really integral moment in their history where they're not the same band from this moment on. There's a lot of influence from this that bleeds into the future of the band.
Yeah,
yeah.
Sorry, you go ahead. I just interrupted.
Okay, I was gonna say, like, just through the work they did with Mike Patton, like that influence is very much. It was already a little bit prevalent on Calculating Infinity, but after this release, it's like it's much more entrenched in their sound.
Yeah. I agree, for sure. What was I gonna say? Like, if they didn't do this EP, like, I think the rest of their discography would have sounded way different. So I think they probably picked up some things from Mike Patton, and then I'm sure Greg heard this and then sort of decided, like, what sort of things he wanted to do vocally from Miss Machine onwards. Yeah, and, like, the reason I don't think, like, if the EP wasn't this good, I don't think we'd even discuss it. We would have just done their 6 albums, right? Like, because it's, I don't know, we didn't do, like, the sort of pre-calculating Dillinger stuff, but it is a super important part of their discography, and sort of a super important release if you're, like, a big mathcore fan.
Yeah.
I guess we could just go ahead and do our favorite, least favorite. For me, I'd go with Pig Latin, just because those intense vocals. It's a sweet track. It would be between that and the first song, but I'm gonna go with Pig Latin, and then yeah, my least favorite would be Come to Daddy, just because there's sort of a downturn in quality.
Yeah, yeah. I think I agree with you. Come to Daddy is the weakest song here. Which is to say it's still like a 4 to 5 song, but
Yeah.
it is the weakest of the bunch. When Good Dogs Do Bad Things, I think is the best song on here.
Okay.
And I also think that it might I'll confirm this at the end, but it might be the best song they ever did.
Oh wow.
Specifically, I mean, it all works. It's a 3-part song. There's the first part, there's an ambience middle, and then the ending. That whole ending section is like pretty incredible. So, yeah, I would say that it's the best song on this album, and it's one of my top 25 metal songs of all time.
Oh wow. It is a great track. I maybe didn't love it as much as you, but like I still really I loved it still. I think it is one of Dillinger's best, if not the best, sort of 5 minute plus songs. Because as you go, they start to have more longer songs, and I think I'll have to think about it more as we go through the discog. But I think it's their best. I think it's their best longer cut to me.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll refamiliarize myself as we go along, but I definitely like that is actually a good. Well, do I want to say that? I was going to say it's a good starting point, but it is for the first. I would say it's an essential song, whether it's the first one you hear or the 10th or whatever. It's one you have to hear if you're a fan of this band.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, shall we move on to Miss Machine?
Yeah, Miss Machine, 2004.
Alrighty. So, Miss Machine was the first album with Greg Puciato. I cannot pronounce the name ever.
I think you have it. You have it.
You know, it's this is one of those albums that it sounds a lot like the album cover to me. I thought they really hit the nail on the head with that. And it's the first full-length record that sort of has sort of influences outside of mathcore. Like you have some alternative metal, some sort of experimental moments. This is like the first album where they really started branching out, sort of after Mike Patton handed the mantle over to Gregory. This was one of the albums that sort of like landed in the middle of the road for me. It is really good. Every song on it, this is one of the ones I had the most trouble picking a worse song off of. This is sort of all really solid Dillinger Escape Plan songs, sort of front to back. Yeah, I don't know. What were some of your thoughts on this?
Miss Machine, yeah, I think, like you said, this was the first one that Greg did, and I read somewhere, I forget where, and this was a couple of years ago, but Greg saying that he was intimidated, understandably, to take over vocal duties, having to follow Mike Patton, who was one of his biggest influences and just one of the most revered vocalists, ever. And I think that you can hear a little bit of that insecurity in this album.
Okay.
There's a little bit of just like uncertainty maybe with some of the delivery. Not that he does a bad job. I actually think that he does a really admirable job on the vocals here, and he's called upon to do a lot more than Dimitri was on this album. There's singing, there's spoken word, there's that distinct Patton-y, like low speaking thing. On a song like Setting Fire to Sleeping Giants. So I think that
there was a lot on his plate.
Yeah, there was a lot he was tasked with, and at times it is pretty obvious that he's channeling Mike Patton and his predecessor Dimitri. But I think that it's a strong clutch of songs. I think it's a good album. I think the production is weaker than everything that would come after it. I actually think it's weaker production than the first album. This is the one dip in that production, incline plane that I was talking about before. I think that this is the production is just kind of lacking on this album. But from a song perspective, you have some of their best songs on this album. A song like "Sunshine the Werewolf."
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's one of their best songs. You have Van Damsel, very underrated. Unretrified is the poppiest thing they've done to this point, and it's a catchy song, and it's pretty good. Even Phone Home is a really cool, again, kind of poppy, barring the outro, a poppy kind of tune. So they're expanding what they're doing. It's a little bit tentative, I guess, a little bit. There is a level of uncertainty on this album.
There wasn't a lot off this I'd put like as a top 10 Dillinger song. Maybe like "Sunshine the Werewolf" would be like an outside contender, but a lot of this would sort of fall in like the middle of the pack. Sort of had to rank all of Dillinger's songs, which I'm not gonna do, but if I had
that would
to,
be a tough task.
Yeah.
No, I mostly agree. I think it's very strong. But knowing what comes after it, it's really like, this is like the first modern Dillinger album almost.
Yeah.
If there's like, and so they improve upon it. Well, or do they? But we'll get to Ironworks in a sec. Yeah, I think it's strong. I think that there's a lot of good songs on it. It doesn't totally come together as an album, but it's really good. To put it simply.
Oh, for sure. I had a few highlights on this, sort of just echoing off you. "Sunshine the Werewolf," Van Damsel. "Sunshine the Werewolf" especially, it has some of their best guitar work. Van Damsel also just absolutely nuts. Crutch Field Tongs is like one of their coolest interludes. Like,
Yeah.
I found they sort of they lost their touch with interludes a bit after that, and then the hashtag song off the first one. That's like two of their best interlude tracks. And then they didn't really do as many sort of with their last couple albums anyways, but I always enjoyed that stuff because they're not long enough to sort of get annoyed with, but there's interesting little excursions. And then I guess the two poppiest songs off this, "Setting Fire to Sleeping Giants" and "Unretrified," I thought they killed it on "Setting Fire," just because it was still like its own song. It's really well composed, has good movements sort of from part to part with distinct, it's not too repetitive. And that chorus is super catchy. That's almost something off "Say Hello to Sunshine." Like,
Yeah.
it kind of reminded me of that. It was super cool. Yeah. And it's and that's the thing, like, you can tell he's kind of channeling Mike Patton a lot.
Yeah.
On "Setting Fire," like, it's not too noticeable. You can tell he likes him, but like, it's its own song. But like, "Unretrified" was sort of the song I had a problem with because it's a little bit too long for me, and it sort of has the typical like Dillinger Escape Plan sort of modern chorus, where I think that's sort of where it's like a bit too much Patton worship for my taste.
Yeah.
That was, and "Phone Home," you mentioned that, super cool. The outro on that is one of my favorite moments on the album. But yeah, I'll just go into my favorite, least favorite. So I'll say "Sunshine the Werewolf," my favorite track off this, and then "Unretrified," for the reasons I stated, would have to be my least favorite.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do agree that Unretrified is very patent. I do think that Setting Fire to Sleeping Giants is very Mike Patton too. That sounds like a Faith No More song.
Yeah,
Except,
it's true. Maybe
yeah.
I just like the song more, but
Well, I mean, there's that section in that track where it's like the post-chorus where they're doing those clangy Dillinger chords.
yeah.
That part is distinctly Dillinger, but the verses are so Faith No More, where he's using that low voice. But who cares? I mean, it's a great song. Unretrified is interesting. It is a pop song. It is kind of the experimental metal like standby to put a pop song like this in the second last spot on your album. Like a lot of
It's a
bands
bold
in the
thing to
genre,
do.
yeah, a lot of bands have done this and did this before Dillinger. Like a band like Dog Fashion Disco does this on a lot of their albums.
Oh, okay.
On Adultery, for example, and on other records too. But yeah, I don't have a problem with it as a song. I think it's pretty good. I think my least favorite song was once again the last song, The Perfect Design, which feels to me like a slightly less good version of the songs that came before it.
Fair enough.
It doesn't really do anything new. I like when an album has some sense of progression to it as you go along. Like it doesn't have to totally deviate, but there's something.
It's a safe
distinguishing
song to
each
end
song.
the album with.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what I was saying earlier, where it's the title is ironic. The Perfect Design. They use this album design a lot, where yeah, they put something like Unretrified there in the second last spot. But then they almost are like, no, don't worry, we're not a pop band now, and they put in like this mathcore thing at the end.
We're
like,
still a mathcore band.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, we haven't sold out. Still buy our albums. Like, oh, we're not. That was a fun little thing, but don't worry, we're still heavy. Like, which is a little bit.
It's like a bit of backpedaling to you. Like,
Yeah, it's a bit safe. Weirdly, it's like putting a mathcore song is a safe move, but in the case of this band, it does feel that way. I think it would have been bolder to end the album with Unretrified or
enough.
something, like or mix up that track order a bit. Because as it is, that last song, I mean, it just gets lost in the shuffle for me, just based on the sequencing of the album. So I would have to say that's my least favorite one here.
yeah, fair enough. That's almost like off its placement. So, do you think would you like the song more? Say if it got like pushed into the middle of the album and like Unretrified ended the album.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I think that it would have it wouldn't have that kind of stigma of it because it does matter where you put a song on an album. Like
Yeah,
that
I
is
agree.
that's an important piece of the puzzle for like maximizing the potential of each song. And in the case of this song, I just think that it was a bad move to throw it at the end of your album when, yeah, you could have a more kind of natural arc to the album. It doesn't even if you end the album with Unretrified or you move it around or something. If you better sequenced your songs, they would each stand out more. And a song like "We Are the Storm" to me also kind of blends in. It's in the middle of the record. It comes after "Phone Home." It's a little bit lost in the shuffle as well. And then you have "Baby's First Coffin." So yeah, I think that mixing like doing an alternate track listing on this album is an exercise that would be fruitful. It's one of those albums. So yeah, I do think that if it was a different order, my picks might be different.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I already gave my two. Yeah, that's fair enough. You're right about The Perfect Design. It's a safe song. I just sort of like every experiment when you do, not even just as Dillinger, but any band, it's a gamble, right? Like, are the fans going to eat this up? Is it good enough? Like, will this speak to our fans as a new track, as something unique? And I find Setting Fire to Sleeping Giants, that falls in that category. It's a gamble that I think pays off. And then for me, at least, Unretrified is like a second gamble that unfortunately it just doesn't really hit the mark for me. But that's music. That's opinions, right?
That's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I've said what I wanted to say about Miss Machine. Is there anything else you want to talk about with that, or?
So my favorite song is "Sunshine the Werewolf," and
oh yeah, sorry, I missed that.
No, it's okay. I know, I totally forgot too. I think "Sunshine" is probably my favorite. Though I have to shout out Van Damsel too. That song is crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, Perfect Design, weakest by virtue of it being unfortunately placed. Yeah, after this, like after all the other songs that are similar to it. So yes, those are my picks.
Fair enough. So we move on to a more polarizing record called Ironworks. This is the first Dillinger album I heard.
Same with me.
Yeah. Has some of their best songs. I'm gonna say some of their like worst elements in it.
Yeah.
The thing about it is it's still really, really good. It's just like in comparison to such a solid discography, you have to, one has to be a bit lower than the rest. But there's songs off this I really like. In my top 10 Dillinger songs, I would be inclined to put Fix Your Face. I would be inclined even more so to put Lurch. Milk Lizard, it has a nostalgia value to me because that's one of the first I heard too. But it's still, like, I think that's one of their best poppier songs. I think that might be their best, like, sort of more pop cut from them for me. Just because they haven't really... It has sort of, like, a vibe that you're at this, like, insane party or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With a bunch of lunatics or something. And that... like, especially with all those horns and everything, I don't... that's a vibe they never really were able to go back to. The interludes are interesting, but some of them are a bit out of place. Like I forget. It's like When Acting as a Wave. It's like a minute and a half, but like it feels like it's so long. Like, sort of like electronic, like fiddling. So there was some missteps on this that they were able to correct later on, in my opinion. But yeah, it has some of their best songs for me, and then has some of their worst moments. What were your thoughts on Ironworks?
Yeah, I think this is their most up and down album. I think that it has, like you said, some of their highest highs, and then it also has some of their, like, they try a lot. They throw a lot of stuff at the wall on this album.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I also want to say I think this might be one of the worst. This is my least favorite mix on all the albums.
Oh, why is that? That's interesting. Why?
It's super, like, usually I like this more, but it's like it's super brick walled. I don't know if it's like mastered worse than the rest of them. Like it feels it feels like all the tracks are like the meters are just like bursting out, like, and just getting more distorted. Like there's like a lot more clipping on this than the other Dillinger records for me. Like
clipping as a guest, I didn't realize.
Yeah. There's a few records
this is a pre-Death Magnetic, so yeah, the whole brick wall thing, I guess, was still a thing at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of see that. I mean, I do think that Miss Machine sounded worse, but I do agree that it's not a perfect production. I think they would refine it on the next few albums.
Yeah.
Didn't bother me too much. I do think that this one, it has some issues with the sequencing again.
With all the interludes in the middle.
Well, yeah, I mean that is kind of fun. Like that is a fun kind of way to do it. But more in the second half of the album when you have You have Party Smasher, and then you have Dead is History, and then Horse and then oh, sorry, I'm echoing again. I can hear myself.
Let me just do something quick. Here, how's that?
Test. Yeah, that's good. Cool.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think that it starts to feel like it's coming off the rails toward the end for me, because you have Milk Lizard, then you have like this mathcore track, Party Smasher, then you have this Dead is History, which is almost like the Setting Fire Sleeping Giants song on this one. Then you got Horse Hunter, which is actually, I think, one of the most underrated songs in their entire discography.
Oh, interesting.
It has the Brent from Mastodon guesting on it, so there's a shout out to the previous podcast.
I did not know Brent Hines.
And then you have the closer, which I don't think is very good.
It's very long.
Sorry?
It's very long.
Oh, you sound like you're super distant. I can't hear you.
Hello.
That
didn't
really
work?
far away.
Shit. Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, that's good.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. So you were talking. I think yeah. Can you hear me?
Oh, you're far away again.
Yeah, I'm not moving. It's something with the wire, I think. All right, one more time. Let's. Hello, test.
Yeah, there we go. That's good.
All right, I'm just like unplugging the wire, but then plugging it back in. I sound okay? Like, still?
Now you're far away again.
All right. This is all staying in the episode. Okay, I'm gonna move the mic over here. Hello?
That's pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna try and stay still. So you were talking about Mouth of Ghosts, I believe.
Right. Yeah, okay, cool. We could just like cut all that out, I guess.
I'm keeping it all in the episode.
Oh, alright, cool. You get to hear the peek behind the curtain. Yeah. So Mouth of Ghosts, I don't think it's a very good song. It just feels like kind of a throwaway. I think that speaking of the production, the shakers are mixed way too loud for me. It's just sort of a weird. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how else you're supposed to end an album like this, which is so experimental. It is so versatile. They are trying so many things. I don't know what the answer is to that, but I just don't think I don't think it's a very good song. It's too long. It doesn't wrap anything up for me. But on the other side of it, you have Fix Your Face, which opens the album, which is one of my favorite Dillinger songs ever.
It's a great
track. This is the song you have Dimitri come back in, so you got two vocalists going. You follow that up with Lurch, which is another great song. Black Bubblegum is pure Faith No More worship again, but it's fun. And then the middle section of the album gets a little bit wonky.
It's compelling, I'd say that.
Yeah. It's fun to listen through it. I mean, it's kind of a series of underdeveloped ideas, honestly, but it's not like it's not entertaining.
Yeah.
And then you get through that section, and then you have Milk Lizard, which is like awesome. It's just a really fun track. And then you kind of end the album with this alternating series of like really heavy banger and then kind of experiment banger. So yeah, it's a kind of curiously structured album. But I like the fact that they're trying stuff. I do admire that about it. Does it totally come together? No. Is it fun? Yeah. So yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mostly agree with that. I find the album to be like pretty top heavy. Like the last couple tracks I'm not super into. They're too long. Like the final track, I mean, it kind of It's like they're trying to like address your issue with Miss Machine, and then they also fail by like doing the opposite. But that's that you can say like you can structure an album like I want to have this kind of song at the end, but like the songs still they have to be good, right? They have to. Yeah. It's not like they're bad, but I think that song that could have been like a 4-minute song. You just cut out some of the repetition.
Yeah. Oh, sorry to once again technically interrupt here, but you sound very like low quality now. Like it's hard to tell what you're saying.
Oh, jeez. I think all my chords are just breaking constantly, so it has to be this. Here, you talk a bit.
Test.
Here, I'm gonna try something real quick. What if I do this? Hello, stuff. This is
that's better.
I really love Dillinger Escape Plan.
That's better. I can hear what you're saying now.
Okay, I don't know what to do about that. That's because I have that plugged in because that would be purely based off what I have plugged in here and like my phone. I'm gonna cut this out. Hi, Ben Weinman. How does that sound?
Better.
All right,
that's better.
I turned my phone upside down. Maybe like I mistook where the microphone was because that's yeah. So the microphone's at the top, and then the speakers are at the bottom. So that I thought both were in the same place. So that's an improvement. That unfortunately, I think that's the best I can do.
Okay. Well, we can make do.
What if I do this? Does that sound better to you?
Say one more thing.
Hello. This is.
That sounds. Yeah.
I don't know why my microphone will have because I'm just going really close to the mic instead of the phone because I thought I was like talking into the phone.
Okay.
I'm just gonna keep going here. So I was talking about Ironworks. So the ending songs are too long, but it has some of their best tracks. It's just the album's structured poorly. So I'm gonna say my favorite track is probably Lurch because I listen to it the most. It has this like creepy stalker vibe to it, which I picked up on, which I usually never pick up on lyrical themes. So that was cool. And then like Milk Lizard would be a close second, Heavy Nostalgia, and that's one of their best popular songs. And then I'm not sure what you're gonna say, but I'll agree with you. I think the closer is the worst because it's way too long, and at least like the interludes, they kind of, if you're not into them, like when acting as a wave, they kind of just end. But this is still like I'm just talking about these music like sort of to Dillinger's standards. I still think it's all like good to great. But yeah, give me your favorite and give me your least favorite.
Yeah, my favorite song on this album is probably "Fix Your Face," although I do really like Milk Lizard, and I also have to shout out Horse Hunter. I do think that is super underrated. No one ever talks about it, and it's actually really good.
I'll have to go back to that song. That I think that kind of just got mixed up in the shuffle for me when I was doing all my listening.
Yeah, it's really good, and the part with the Mastodon vocalist is super catchy that comes in at the end. So I like
the Hunter.
Yeah, I wonder where they got the inspiration. And I would agree the weakest is the closer. Again, it's just not a particularly satisfying song, and the mix is really wonky. But yeah, overall, I think Ironworks is fun. It is an album that I always enjoy listening through just because there's so many ideas that kind of burst out at you, which not all of them work, but I like albums that try stuff. I would much rather listen to an album that tries a whole bunch of new ideas and doesn't totally hit the mark all the time versus an album that just plays it safe and repeats what the band has done previously or what other bands have done or any whatever. So yeah, Ironworks, up and down album, but a fun one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it was sort of like, let's just try a bunch of stuff after Miss Machine, and then I think on the subsequent albums they sort of rolled with what stuck, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it.
So I guess we could just move on. Next up, I believe, have Option Paralysis. The artwork was done by previous vocalist Dimitri, which I didn't know until today. So that's an interesting fact. It was released in 2010, and this, I think, like, it sort of takes the elements from Ironworks and refines them into what, you got 10 songs? Yeah, like just 10 really well done songs. This is one of my favorites. Personally, you know, I think, what was the track? When Good Dogs Do Bad Things. That's like one of their best longer cuts. One of the contenders, I'd have to say, is Farewell Mona Lisa, because that song has like everything, like sort of every great element of Dillinger sort of packed into a song. Like, you sort of have like your cool hooky alt metal moments, intense T-Dep mathcore, and just sort of cool electronics and experimentation. That's sort of all in Farewell. Yeah, what's your thoughts on Option Paralysis?
I think that this is the most focused they've been since the first album. I do think that they took what worked on Option or on Ironworks, which is a lot of what they were doing before, and refined it. This one has a jazzier presence to me almost. There's more piano on this one. A song like Widower is a song that I would not have expected to hear from this band, but it actually works really well. It's like a love ballad,
Yeah.
which later morphs into something more traditional of the band, but the first half is very soft.
Another, sorry, go on.
That's okay. What were you gonna say? I'm curious what your thoughts were.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were done talking about that song, Widower. But I was just gonna say another one of the weirder pop songs on that was Chinese Whispers. That had a sort of weird, creepy vibe, and then it gets really massive at the end. That was the one, just sort of to echo off you, that was a song I wasn't expecting from Dillinger, was Chinese Whispers.
Yeah, and I think they try some more stuff on this one. I do think that the first 6 songs are very solid on this.
I agree.
There isn't like a really weak spot from tracks 1 through 6, and then when you get to Roomful of Eyes, and so the last 4 songs, it gets a little bit dicier. It's not even that they're bad; like, they're all actually good tracks from then till the end. They just don't hit me as hard, and maybe it's because I've already heard the first 6, and Widower has this very climactic feel to it, so I'm almost worn out by that point.
Yeah.
But I do feel that the second half is a slight dip from the first. So again, I can't say it's a flawless album. I do think that to this point, you've Calculating Infinity, and then you have this one as the two that are very, in terms of an album experience, the most focused.
The best structured in a way.
Yeah, that have the best structure, that the songs sound like they belong together, I should also, the production is amazing on this album.
Yeah, I agree.
Really well produced. And a song like Endless Endings is just nuts. That was another one of the first songs that I really heard from this band.
Oh yeah, that Endless Endings that's like in my top 5 Dillinger songs.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And you have Gold Teeth on a Bum, which is, again, it's like you're going to see this as the next couple albums come up too, like the poppier song,
The
like you know.
the intro to Gold Teeth on a Bum. Just 'cause I just wanted to get this in before we switch songs. That's like a mandolin they have in the intro, or like
Oh, okay.
what's that other, like, because they have the guitar doing like a duo with I think it's like a mandolin, and they're just doing this weird sort of dissonant kind of riff.
Yeah.
I thought that was super cool. I would like to hear. I don't know, because they don't bust out the auxiliary instruments that often. That I'd like to hear a bit more of that. But yeah, go on.
Yeah. I think that's cool, and I think that ties into the pianos, and there is like a greater range of instrumentation, and there is a jazzy flavor to this album to me that is unique to this album. Like, they don't do that again. And it's I probably Widower is really informing that atmosphere to me, but it does feel almost like not their jazz album, but their jazz album.
Yeah, fair enough.
Which one is the song that has the piano outro? Is it "I Wouldn't If You Didn't"? There's that whole piano. Yeah,
I was gonna get to that, because that's probably one of my favorite moments, like sort of across their discography, and this might be a top 5 song for me. Is I Wouldn't If You Didn't. It's sort of like, the second half of the album isn't as good as the first, but I think this song kind of carries the second half. Because that moment, sort of where the band just kind of randomly they taper off, and then that piano comes in. Sort of the whole band comes back in, sort of the beautiful piano melody, and then he's screaming like "Suffering Is Love" at the end. I think that's around the ending of the song. That, like, I don't know, that was one of the sort of coolest moments to me. Like, it's such a jarring transition, but for me it works.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree with that. I think the lyrics are a little bit, silly, but I do think that it's a great, from a performance and an instrumental standpoint, it's awesome. And the other thing about this album that is really odd is that this is the lowest rated Dillinger album on Rate Your Music, which I don't understand.
I disagree with that, yeah.
Yeah, which I really don't understand. It's like, were people not listening to it and just it's crazy to me to call this the weakest Dillinger album when it's obviously not. It just seems such an odd opinion to me, but what do I know?
Yeah. In terms of underrated tracks on an underrated album, on Rate Your Music at least, I thought Parasitic Twins is one of their best closers. So that's sort of one of the diversions that I was really into. It sort of had a like kind of a creepy soundtrack vibe to it throughout the whole track. It's not like one of those build-up songs that they do. And yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of Tim Burton-esque in a way, just like it's something that would like be like a song in one of his movies. And that they didn't quite hit the mark on their other closers, like Miss Machine, Ironworks, and for me at least, I thought they stuck the landing the best on this album.
Yeah, I would say that this is not as blatantly kind of referential to the other songs or unsuccessful or whatever. This is actually a pretty cool song, and I think that again contributes to the consistency of this album, which is greater than most of their other albums to this point. And I think Farewell Mona Lisa is a great opener too. It does set the stage. It's longer. There's that really heavy ending to it. Overall, this is a one of the strongest albums they ever put out. It's quite baffling to me that it's not held in higher esteem overall. I don't get that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in terms of pure like song structure, I think you'd agree, like, the first song on any album is supposed to sort of give the listener a taste of like everything they're going to hear on the album, or at least like the best parts. of like what's going to be predominantly on the album. You can still have detours and everything. There's no rules to music, but a lot of like popular albums are like this, and I think Farewell Mona Lisa just hits the nail on the head with that. You have like your pure insanity, you have your choruses, you have your electronics, like it's all there, sort of in a 5-minute span that doesn't feel too long to me at all.
Yeah. I think the band misstepped slightly when they put Gold Teeth on a Bum as track 3. That seems to me too early for that song. I think that around track, another track or two could have gone by, and then you could have put Widower come in later, maybe.
They could have thrown it. Maybe I'm just thinking right now if we're doing alternate track listings, I'd put it. That's the thing. There's sort of like a lot of long songs in the middle. I would maybe put it after Room Full of Eyes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Throw that down there.
Yeah, because I think that they wanted to put the quote unquote pop song in the third slot, which is sort of a typical
cliche,
spot.
yeah.
Yeah, that you would do this, and they do it again on One of Us is the Killer, right? But for the flow of the album, I don't think it totally works. It's a little bit. It would be better utilized in another spot. That's a pretty minor complaint, but one I'm going to bring up anyway. And anyway, yeah, on the whole, I think this album's really good. My favorite song, gosh, it's actually tough to pick one. Like a really like weird part of me wants to pick Widower, but I won't. I think my favorite song on here, man,
it's tough. There's no wrong answer here. I don't think. Like,
yeah. We also haven't mentioned Good Neighbor. That's a really great like blast song in the vein of endings. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll say Farewell Mona Lisa is my favorite one. I guess it's just such a.
It has
it's one of their. Yeah, it's one of their classic tracks. Weakest song, gosh, I don't know. One of the latter half, maybe Chinese Whispers or Parasitic Twins are weakest. Not that they're bad, but I think that the other tracks are better. So yeah,
fair enough. My favorite, that's really tough. That's gonna be tougher than least favorite for me. It's got Endless Endings. You got like the guitar work on that and Good Neighbor. That like between those two, it's hard to pick. And then you have Farewell Mona Lisa, like you said, amazing song. I like Chinese Whispers. It's not gonna be my favorite. And I would maybe throw Parasitic Twins as another contender. I'm gonna say like Endless Endings, just because when I'm sort of stumped, I just go for the songs that like I gravitate towards the most if I'm just passively listening to music, and Endless Endings would be my pick. Just off a sort of enjoyment subjective level. My least favorite song on this, I don't know, Room Full of Eyes sort of got lost in the shuffle for me. That's one like I just sort of found a bit nondescript. The rest, like I think almost every other song I could comment on except that one. Not that it's bad, but that was sort of the one that left the least amount of impact on me.
Yeah, that's fair. The ending is kind of memorable for me, but as a whole, it might be the one that is. And again, probably by virtue of where it falls in the track listing, is kind of lost in the shuffle. But yeah, cool. Okay, there's option paralysis.
Yeah. So I guess we'll move on to the Dillinger Escape Plan's 2013 album. One of Us is the Killer. So this was the only record or one of two that they signed with Sumerian Records, and they put this out. So that when I was like super into like metalcore and stuff, I would follow Sumerian for all their new releases, and they had Dillinger on there, which was a nice surprise. And they put out One of Us is the Killer. This is a pretty sweet album. I'll let you open stuff up. What do you think of this? Because I'm pretty sure at least a while back you told me this might have been your favorite, but I'll let you speak to that though.
Yeah, that was my original thought, and then going into this podcast, I re-listening to everything. I might it's interesting on a pure replayability, how often I want to go back to it level. Like, this is my most played Dillinger album.
Yeah.
And so on that level, it is my favorite one. Do I think it's better than Calculating Infinity as an album? No, but I think it does certain things better than Calculating Infinity did.
It's produced way better.
Yeah, for one thing, the production this is the best produced Dillinger album, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, actually.
Yeah, the sound is like phenomenal. The sequence of songs from Prancer into When I Lost My Bet, those two tracks, is one of the best 1-2 punches of any metal album ever, I think.
Yeah.
The way that those two tracks seeg into one another is just really iconic and are so great. And then even the second half on here, which has one throwaway song, which is that CH375 like riff exercise.
Oh yeah.
Which is kind of an odd thing to throw. I mean, I think that really could have been developed more, honestly, or just left off the album. Is strong. Crossburner is so underrated. No one ever talks about it. I love it. Paranoia Shields is one of their best pop songs. Understanding Decay, one of their most underrated songs ever. Nothing's Funny, another great pop song. But so this is the album where I think they best streamlined all the elements from the Miss Machine onwards. This is the peak of that sound to me. So Calculating Infinity is like early era Dillinger, and it's really pretty phenomenal. And then you have the Ironies of Dead Scene EP, and then you have all these albums that come after Ironies of Dead Scene. And One of Us is the Killer is, for me, like the culmination of that sound. And then Dissociation, which comes up, is almost like the epilogue.
Yeah.
But this is like the climax of modern Dillinger to me. Gosh, yeah. What did you think of it?
Fair enough. In a way, this is sort of this is like juiced up Miss Machine to me almost. Sort of fits that vibe to me. It's like it is a Dillinger Escape Plan album. I think the closer's underrated. The threat posed by nuclear weapons. That was one of the tracks that stood out the most to me because it had sort of like chord progressions and sort of like modes and chord styles that Dillinger doesn't usually use. They have these kind of jangly sounding chords halfway through the song. I thought was pretty neat. Yeah, and one of my issues, I think it's the best produced. The album's the best structured. Is there wasn't like enough detouring for me. Which is maybe it's kind of hypocritical because like on Ironworks I was saying we were saying they did it too much and it failed, but like every song, like there's not any song that kind of like flounders, but I find it really safe, just in my opinion at least.
Yeah,
I mean the openers, you got Prancer, which it kind of falls in that like 43% burnt, like honeysuckle, that's how you say it. Niche of songs. That's a great track. Yeah, it's a great opening 1-2 punch. When I Lost My Bet that might be my favorite track on the album. It's just absolutely nuts. You get the classic T-Dep sort of math chord blasting. What else is on here? Yeah, and that I maybe liked the I don't even want to say that title, CH375 268 277 ARS. I thought it was cool, and you know what, it it's short enough where like it doesn't. It's like a weird sort of half baked thing, but it ends before I can really critique it. And that it's sort of it falls in the same category this album as Miss Machine does for me, where it's just a lot of like kind of middle of the pack Dillinger Escape Plan songs. Like I like this album. I like it more than Ironworks, and maybe about the same as Miss Machine. But past that, I'd almost like rank it higher purely off production. Yeah, I'll just go ahead with my favorite, least favorite. I'd maybe say The Threat Posed by Nuclear Weapons, just because I think that's the most unique song off here.
Okay.
And I wasn't huge on the title track, I guess. I'll talk a bit about that and say it's my least favorite. Just like the chorus is nice, but they've done that better before. Sort of where they have like the clean chorus and the drums sort of do this triplet feel in the middle of it, right? They had that done better off. I forget where it was. They've done that before with the clean choruses with like spazzy drums sort of going over top of a 4 to the floor bed that the guitar set up.
Yeah.
And the song where they do that better is completely lost on me right now. But
I think they do it a lot.
I found it to be just sort of like a plain Dillinger pop song. So that was probably my least favorite. I don't know, what was your biggest standout moment and what was your biggest poo-poo moment?
Gosh, it is tough to pick a best song. I mean, speak to the title song. I do think that it is it's certainly the most mainstream song on this album, and it's probably the most mainstream song that Dillinger ever did in terms of it's a pop song, right? And I mean, I think that it's actually pretty skillful that they're able to do stuff like that, and not sound like they're compromising their integrity totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm not counting something like Unretrified that's synth based. This is like the most pop rock song.
Yeah, it's a Dillinger sounding song still, unlike Unretrified.
Yeah, which is almost more of a detour type thing. But yeah, I think this is the best album to show somebody who's never heard Dillinger before. This is like the album that is the best introduction to the band. It's true there are less detours, but I do think that makes for a more solid listen. My favorite song on here has to be Prancer, which is maybe it's one of the best songs they've ever done, if not the best. It's pretty genius the way that song comes together. The weakest one is CH37 whatever. That is just it's one of the. It's fine. I actually think it sounds cool, but it sounds like an unfinished demo. It sounds like there's no vocals on it. It only goes on for 2.5 minutes. It's like
I'd pick that after the title track.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the title track is a good song, right?
So do I.
It's not the one that I'm gonna come back to most often, and I actually don't mind it here in the third spot. I think it's pretty good to throw that after that 1-2 punch beginning of those two. Hero of the Soviet Union is insanely underrated. There are so many vocals going on at the end of that song. I've heard the isolated vocal tracks for that song, and they're insane. Yeah, there's like 40 Gregs just screaming the end of that song. It's hilarious. And also, Paranoia Shields is so well written. That's one of those really interesting poppier type songs they've done. But this one has 2 different choruses, which is a really fun trick. That is.
I wish more bands did that.
Yeah, exactly. That more bands kind of. It's like a variation on the chorus that functions as a third chorus, and it's a really smart way to write a song. So I like that. And I think it falls off towards the end a little bit once again, but on the whole, this is probably the most solid album they ever put out. Guess I'm gonna go there.
I agree.
Yeah. So I think this is a really good, and again, it's my most played Dillinger album. Like if I want to hear Dillinger, I'm most likely to throw on something off this album. So yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And that's like a lot of my criticisms of like an album like that and like their other stuff. It's like in relation to like other Dillinger I've heard. Like it's still like if you put it against everything, it's still like really great. Like it's excellent in my opinion. But it's like I'm here to rank these, unfortunately, and that I have to say negative things, which I don't love doing. But
Well, hey, look, it's not flawless. I definitely think that you have something. There are problems with it, but there's a lot more good than bad, I think, on this one. And
I agree.
but one final point on it is that I do think this suffers again from we're going to throw a song in at the end that is a throwback to the sound so that people know we're still the same band. Like, the threat posed by nuclear weapons to me isn't a very satisfying closer.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's not like it's a bad song, but once again, it just falls, like, kind of gets lost in the shuffle because it doesn't really do anything significantly different than what I've already heard on the album and from the band. And whereas Crossburner is much more bold as a song, as a closer, I think that would have been way better. I think you could have scrapped CH-375, thrown in Threat Posed by Nuclear Weapons in that spot, and ended with Crossburner, and had it been a stronger album on the whole. But anyway, that's my alternate track listing.
Fair enough. Yeah, I guess I guess I like the closer a bit more, but that's an opinions thing. I like Crossburner too. It's all the time with Dillinger. There's only like a few times where I've like really liked their longer cuts, which like for me is like anything longer than 4 minutes. Yeah. So let's just keep it going. We got one more album. Dissociation came out in 2016 as their final album. So we're gonna review it, and then we never have to review this band again.
Yeah, I do feel I've listened to so much Dillinger. There's been like calculators going off inside my head for the last week.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be down to like talk about them sort of in a more variety Latin episode.
Yeah. But I mean, we're not gonna unless they
pure
get back
Dillinger
together.
episode. Yeah, we can review a comeback album.
Oh my gosh!
But so we got Dissociation here. It has like a lot of feelings of like being the band's coda, and in a way, like it's my favorite album cover by them.
It's just cool cover.
Cover. It's I think the production actually sort of lags a bit. I think One of Us is the Killer is the best produced. And then I think Dissociation has a bit of a worse mix. Like the drums are like a bit too quiet for me on this. Yeah, but it's a great album. A lot of super memorable moments. Give me some of your thoughts, and then I'll go into more detail after that.
The thing that stood out to me most about this album was the progression of Greg's vocals. You really like. When you're listening to this album and then you go back and listen to Miss Machine, you really hear the enormous amount of progression that he's made.
Strength and confidence.
Yeah, exactly. There are more techniques he's using here. His singing is stronger, and you can see that as you go through the albums, you can see that happening. But it really is at a really satisfying level on this album, especially. Really encapsulated by Limerent Death, which is one of my favorite Dillinger songs. The outro is iconic with the I gave you everything you wanted, him screaming in this increasingly rabid voice, which again is so patent, but he's doing it really well.
Yeah.
And then and even on the title track, the last song that theoretically the band's ever going to put out, he has some very nice crooning on that, which again is so much more developed from what he was doing on the first album.
And that
But
closer, that it doesn't really sound like anything they've ever done. Also,
yeah, I think that this is actually a very good closer. So they finally, on their last album, they have gotten the closing thing right. But yeah, so Greg's vocals really stood out to me on this one. And I mean, other thoughts on it are they have that electronic song Fugue, right? The fourth song,
yeah,
which feels like a fully developed version of something from Ironworks, so that's
yeah,
great.
it's like it's like all the interludes from Ironworks, sort of like actually full baked instead of half baked, and then it's like a full track.
Yeah, exactly. Like they actually took that idea and did something with it. But then it annoys me that that never happens again. It's kind of like one song, and then you never hear anything like that again. So I think that this album, for me, is slightly up and down. I don't think that Symptom of Terminal Illness is particularly good, for one thing. I think it's an okay version of some of the Setting Fire to Sleeping Giants, the Paranoia Shields of their discography,
Yeah.
those poppier songs. It's okay, but it's not incredible. And as the second song, it comes a little bit early for me, maybe.
Yeah.
Coming
What'll-
right off Limerent Death.
What I'll have to say is like for this album, I find I think I liked Limerent Death a little less than you. The first it doesn't really pick up for me, this album, until like Wanting Not So Much As To. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, one of the weirdest song titles in their discography, right there.
Yeah. And it was weird because most of the time, like Dillinger just really starts off like right at the races. So then, like, I was listening to the Limerent Death and Symptom of Terminal Illness. Limerent Death has some cool stuff in it. It has some cool leads. Like at the start, there's like a slow to fast kind of guitar part going on. But near those two tracks, after I'm going through them, and it's like, wow, is Dissociation like my least favorite Dillinger album? And then I find it really picks up sort of in the middle, and then it ends really well. But yeah, I wanted to get that in there because we were talking about Symptom of Terminal Illness. But go on.
Yeah, no, I mean that's fair. Limerent Death, in a way, I think that's there's a case that it's the heaviest song they've ever done in a way. It's not the most spastic, but I think it's the most like purely aggressive song in their discography.
You're not
wrong. And then for me, the album kind of, so you have Limerent Death. I love it. You have Symptom of Terminal Illness, a little bit blah, but not terrible. I can live with it. Wanting Not So Much is fine. I think it goes on too long. And then Fugue is really cool.
The spoken word in I'm just gonna call it Wanting Not So Much. That was neat. That we haven't really heard him do some. Or was there something like that off Miss Machine? I'm starting to go crazy. No, I don't think there was.
There was nothing to this level, which again is like playing into the Greg's developing vocals thing. Like that's another new technique, right? Which I think is cool. I think that's really awesome. I mean, I think the song goes on too long, but I like the spoken component on that song. The thing for me is that this album kind of also, it starts really blending together in the middle. So you have a middle lag for me on this one, where Surrogate to me is a sixth song plunked in the middle here. Like I just don't get it totally. It's fine, but it's nothing. There's nothing about that song that really gets my heart racing or anything. It's like kind of a generic, an overlong Dillinger song. Honeysuckle is amazing. That might be the best song on the album.
What's your thoughts on just because you said the middle was blended a bit together? I almost disagree. What was your feeling about Low Fields Boulevard?
That's cool. I think that was that's a great track. I don't think it's as good as Limerent Death or Honeysuckle or some of the similar songs on other albums. I mean, it mostly stands out to me for the beginning, which is pretty insane, coming right out of the electronic song. I liked it. It would be one of my 5 favorite songs on this album. But yeah, I like it. I think it's good.
Fair enough. Like that was Lowfield Boulevard. That could be my favorite off this. I didn't really decide my favorite and least favorites. Like I just sort of wrote down a bunch of notes on each song as I listened to it. But that it starts off absolutely insane, and then you get the sort of jazzy interludes. I like that, where they sort of just throw in the jazz chords and a nice lead over there.
Yeah.
I like that stuff.
Right.
And then it brings the horns back. They come in over top of that, which they haven't really even touched like any brass instrument
that's right.
since Milk Lizard. So that song actually stood out to me the most. So yeah, I wanted to sow some disagreement in this podcast.
No, I think that's fair. The horn thing, I guess sure. I guess I should have mentioned the horn thing. I mean, in the context of the album, it stands out. Like Dissociation almost feels to me like they're like plucking all the elements from previous.
It's like a
albums
culmination of the other 6 almost. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of fun in a way. I do wish that, again, like if they're going to use horns on a song, like maybe do something more throughout the album with it. But on a song by song basis, sir, it's pretty cool.
I do agree with you about sort of the length of Surrogate, though. It is a long.
Well,
song.
yeah. I guess I probably misspoke a bit when I said the middle of the album. I really mean like songs 6 to 9. Like there's like Honeysuckle's great, but then you have Surrogate, you have Manufacturing Discontent, you have Apologies Not Included, which all 3 of those for me are like middle of the road, fine Dillinger songs, but none of them stand out to me. Nothing to Forget is really fun. It's probably the most Faith No More straight up worship they've ever done. I think they've even said this was their attempt to do a Faith No More song. Which, hey, fine by me. It's fun. But anyway, and then you have the closer, which is this very somber, like violin-driven piece. So, I think that again, it's a solid album. Like, don't get me wrong, but
Dissociation could be like the title track. I mean, it might be my favorite closer. It's like tied with Parasitic Twins for me. It would have to be one of those 2.
I agree. I think it is the best closer they've
Fair
done.
enough.
Like I think it wraps up
not
the
a
album
wrong answer.
nicely. No, I think it wraps up their career very nicely. Like, so I think that's really good. So I think it's not up and down, but it's like up and middle. Like this album is never bad. It's always like consistently good, but but there are like quality spikes. Like the first song amazing, you get Honeysuckle amazing, but it's a little bit like good but not great for throughout a lot of it for me.
Fair enough. One other thing, that sort of weird intro in Manufacturing Discontent, that was like one of the moments, because we're talking about sort of picking like bits and pieces from all the albums. That's like the one part that sort of reminded me of Irony is a Dead Scene and like nothing else.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh? I didn't pick up on that.
Cool. What else do I have? I just looked at my notes about this. I think my favorite song on this, it would have to be Low Fields Boulevard. I was like tempted to say Fugue, but like that's such a weird song. Like you can't say that's like my favorite Dillinger Escape Plan song. Fugue's up there because it's super cool. Honeysuckle, Contender. And I found there was sort of like a lot of cool detours, even if they were sort of picking off past albums. They're distant enough in the past to keep it fresh. The least favorite song off this is tough. I kind of forgot like the sort of first few tracks existed. Symptom of Terminal Illness, I think. Yeah, that's actually by far my least favorite off this. It was kind of boring to me. Even like Limerent Death, like I liked some of it. It was more, it just went on a bit too long to me, but I still liked elements of it. But then Symptom of Terminal Illness, I was a bit bored by. I don't know what. Give me your favorite. Give me your least favorite.
Yeah. So my favorite is either Honeysuckle or Limerent Death. Those are the two like I think essential songs off this album.
Yeah.
I'll go with. I'll go with Limerent Death to be different, but I think both of them are great. And then least favorite song, it's got to be like Apologies Not Included or Surrogate. One of those mildly like inoffensive Dillinger songs.
Yeah, they're middle of the pack songs. Yeah.
Yeah, they just don't do like in the context of the discography, just don't do much for me. So one of those.
Yeah,
so I think picks. Yeah. So I think Dissociation is like, even though it is kind of sporadic, it's actually a fairly solid record from front to back, but also less entertaining than something like Ironworks, which is throwing a whole bunch of stuff at you.
Yeah, the fun factor is like turned down a little bit.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? Oh, and then like top 5 Dillinger moments is like the breakdown at the end of Honeysuckle, of course.
Yeah, which is amazing.
That's like a callback to 43% Burn.
It is, yeah. That definitely feels like a Calculating Infinity style moment.
They did that on purpose almost.
I think this album is a lot of service of like we're gonna like call back to all our previous albums, like you said with the horns and with that moment there, and with some of the other stuff on here. It does like a conscious effort to kind of revive like high special moments they've done throughout their discography and not replicate them, but like pay homage to them. Yeah, the other quick thing about Dissociation is that I think it's the darkest Dillinger album. There was always kind of a sense of playfulness maybe to their like all the other albums, but this one feels like the most grim.
It's kind of somber, sort of the final coda vibe, and then there is just a lot of darker songs on this.
Yeah, even the ending of Honeysuckle, even like a song like Honeysuckle, which is pretty, I mean it's a Dillinger song, but it's pretty up tempo. Like there is this sort of like somberness to it. Like even when they're going crazy, there is a bit of melancholy, which I'm probably reading into because I know it's their last album, but I do think that pervades the songs a little bit. That sense of like finality.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I can't express that kind of more eloquently than you just did there. It's the final, the final Dillinger coda, and then that I don't know, the title track wraps it up really nicely. Mm-hmm. That's a contender for one of my favorites. And that I think like a lot of those feelings come from that song in particular, for me at least.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because it's such like a non-Dillinger song, but it fits perfectly into the album.
Yep, it's their best closer, as we said.
Yeah. I'm gonna just go ahead and rank these albums.
Yeah, okay. Let's do it.
So the middle is super tough for me. I like all of these albums. I'm just gonna start with that. Like I really like all of these albums. I think most of them are 4 out of 5s for me, except maybe like the one I put at the bottom. So I'm just gonna go ahead. My favorite is Option Paralysis, and then I got Calculating Infinity, Irony is a Dead Scene 3rd, Dissociation 4th, Miss Machine 5th, One of Us is the Killer 6th, and then my least favorite is Ironworks.
Okay. Well, that's reviewing my list. So that's not dissimilar to mine. Sorry, so what was your number one? You said
I went with option paralysis. Yeah, I
Okay,
find it
yeah.
to just on a song for song, punch for punch. It has like all my favorite songs off it.
And where was Calculating Infinity? Was it second for
I
you?
put it second. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, so for me, it was really tough to pick my favorite because, like I said before, I have what I think is their most important and best album, which is Calculating Infinity.
Okay, fair. Any of my top four, I could have like has an argument for me to be number one. Like I was considering putting Calculating as my number one too.
Yeah, I could see an argument for any of the four, my top four too, being there. Um, so you have Calculating Infinity, which I think is like really a seminal metal album. And then you have like One of Us is the Killer and Irony is the Dead Scene, which are the ones that I'd listed to the most.
So that's your third and fourth.
Yeah, okay. And then yeah. So I'm sorry, I'm rambling. So let me just rank them. So I think for number one, like I have to put Calculating Infinity at the number one spot, and it's not saying it's the one I listen to the most, but it's the one that I think is like, as much as one can be objective, I think it is objectively their best, most significant contribution to music is probably that album.
It's a pioneering album.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like I kind of have to make that number one. And for number two, I put One of Us as the Killer in my second spot. And I'll keep it there. It is the one that I think is through and through the most solid listen.
It's a very consistent listen. That's fair.
I think it's consistent. I think, like I said, it's the climax of that era of the band for me is that album where they really kind of all the pieces come together on that one. And there's minor quibbles with it, but on the whole, it's very strong. And then, I have Irony is a Dead Scene at number 3, and it's only there because it's an EP. If it had been a full-length album and all the songs were of the quality of those four, it would be my number one, like without a second thought. But
it ends too fast.
Yeah, as it stands, I mean, I can't put it above all of the LPs, and it's really tough to rank EPs and LPs. But I'll put it in the third spot as sort of a. I really love it, but there you go. And then I have Option Paralysis after Irony is a Dead Scene. I could probably switch those two if you twisted my arm, I could switch them, but I won't. I'll leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
Option Paralysis, number 4, which we talked about at length. Number 5, I've Miss Machine at number 5, which again, I think we talked about. I have Dissociation at number 6, and then last I have Ironworks. So that's my ranking. And the other one important thing to note is that like there's very little variance between it's like a game of inches with a lot of these albums.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I had my top 3 pretty set, and then like picking the order that was tough. So like my tier 1, the Option Paralysis, Infinity, and then Irony, and then and then I kind of knew I was gonna put Ironworks at the bottom, so that's sort of like the third, and then like the second tier was the toughest for me with Dissociation, Miss Machine, and One of Us is the Killer. Like that could be in any order for me, really.
Yeah.
It was sort of like haphazard, like okay, which one like has the songs I like the most on it, like, and that like especially Miss Machine and One of Us is the Killer, like I could swap those and it would still be very accurate. But yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to say. It was a game of inches for me as well.
Yeah, it's a very solid run of albums. Like even Ironworks, which I have at the bottom, is a fun album, and you're not like wasting your time listening to it. It's good.
I guess we could do one more thing. I just popped into my head. You have to do you have to like get someone into Dillinger Escape Plan, and you can only give them a 4-song EP, so like the length of Irony is a Dead Scene. Just don't think too hard about it. If you just want to show someone the band, what 4 songs would you put on it?
Okay. Okay. I mean, so you need to get kind of the range, right? So I would definitely include. Uh, okay, I won't say what order I'd put them in, but I would put.
Yeah,
I
it
would
doesn't
put when
matter.
good. Yeah, I would put when good dogs do bad things as one of them. I would put Prancer as one of them. Um, what's the best? I'm trying to think which one of the poppier songs is the one I would want to show somebody. Um,
I have mine picked out, but
oh, okay. Do you
I'll
want
let
to
it
say
be a
your?
surprise though.
Oh, okay. Um, I might. I might. I might put Black Bubblegum on mine
Oh, interesting. Okay.
as kind of the their poppier side representing that, and then as the fourth track, it should probably be like I should probably put 43% Burnt on there just because it is like such an
Seminal.
iconic
Yeah.
song. So yeah, so when good dogs do bad things, Prancer, Black Bubblegum, and 43% Burnt. I think that kind of
Yeah, it's a great
encompasses a
track
lot of what they're doing. So yeah.
Fair enough. I made you go first to give myself some time to think, and I got most of it. I'd have to go. I'd maybe open it up with Honeysuckle. I'd go with that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that sort of has a bunch of elements of Dillinger in it. What else would I throw in there? I'd have the only reason I wouldn't put the Mike Patton tracks in there is like he's only there for that EP, right? But
Yeah, fair
that's the songs are amazing. That's just my like I'm showing someone Dillinger. Yeah, so what I say? Honeysuckle. I'd put Farewell Mona Lisa in there.
Yeah, that's a good.
Oh,
we're back.
all right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So sorry. Honeysuckle, Farewell Mona Lisa, longer song, has a bunch of elements of their stuff. Pop song, I'd have to put Milk Lizard in there.
Yeah, that's a good. I forgot about Mowgli actually.
I don't know. It's the first song both of us heard, and that got us
that's a good
doing this
choice.
podcast, right? And then I would just have to throw Endless Endings. That would be the last track on it, just because it's nuts.
Yeah, I like yours actually. I completely forgot about Milk Lizard. I might have to throw that on mine. But anyway, yeah, that's a good list.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean that about covers it with Dillinger. There isn't like R.I.P. I hope they come back. Do you think they'd come back to make another album?
Oh man, like ordinarily I would say yes. The thing with this band is that it's such a physical exercise playing with these guys. That,
Yeah,
I mean,
touring
they're getting
with them.
older. Yeah, so I can understand why they had to kind of cut it out when they did. It wouldn't shock me to see them come back.
A few years,
but
maybe.
I feel like if they do come back, it's probably like for one album.
No tour.
And then, yeah, or like maybe they do like a run of shows or something.
Yeah.
But like coming back as a fully functioning band, I feel like at this point they're all in their 40s at this point. It's probably like they're moving on to different musical ventures that don't require them to like destroy themselves every single night.
Setting stuff on fire, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a rigorous tour schedule.
Yeah, and it's almost good if they're gonna come back, they can't come back in like a neutered form. Like that's not gonna satisfy anybody. So
Yeah.
So it wouldn't shock me. I think if it happens, it's gonna be like a one-off kind of thing. So we'll see.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, I completely agree. That I don't think it's like Warped Tour, where like Warped Tour is definitely going to come back. They
No.
I'd say it's like a 50-50, or maybe even like a 40% chance they'd come back in.
For a 43% chance they would come back.
Yes, 43% chance that they'll get burnt. But like in 2024, let's say.
Right. Okay.
Give it a few more
which-
years.
Yeah. One final thought on Dillinger before we wrap this up. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of admire the fact that this band is able to, like, they played Warped Tour, right? They were, I mean, easily the I'll say this. I mean, they were the coolest band on Warped Tour. Like they are really
Not a ton of competition for that, but you're right.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That like they almost don't fit in on that bill, yet they do. Like they managed to straddle that line between more mainstream rock metal scene and also the underground experimental, like avant-garde metal scene too. They're almost like a bridge band between those two scenes that I respect that. I think that's a really tough thing to do.
And I don't even think they're trying to do that. That's just sort of the product of them being themselves, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's definitely the case. Like they're not trying to appease anybody. It just that's what they're coming out with. But I do. That is one thing that I really like about this band is that they're able to like inhabit both of those worlds and kind of exist within them and not feel totally wrong. So
yeah, it's quite the huge crossover fan base.
Yeah.
All right, well, fair enough. We've almost been talking for like 2 hours here, so.
Oh my god! Okay.
Yeah, it's one of our longer episodes apart from the debut.
Jesus.
So yeah, I'm gonna say bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
So that's the. All right.